Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Have you ever felt this way like Silicon Valley's kind of lost its way?
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like instead of solving like the world's biggest problems, we're just kind of stuck in this like loop of likes and notifications.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's kind of the question at the heart of this book we're diving into today, The Technological Republic.
It is.
It's this really bold analysis of technology and power and the future of America.
It is a bold
So
analysis.
if you're into the whole tech and society thing, you are going to want to stick around for this deep dive. And,
Definitely.
oh yeah, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes.
Please.
Okay, so The Technological Republic is written by Alex Karp. He's the CEO of Palantir Technologies,
Hmm.
and Nicholas Zamiska. And there's a link to the book on Amazon down in the description below.
Yep.
But this isn't just like your typical Silicon Valley like success story.
Mm.
It's more like a wake-up call.
Yeah.
It's almost like a manifesto urging Silicon Valley to reconnect with a sense of national purpose.
Yeah, it really is. It's a fascinating blend of history and philosophy and a lot of practical insights.
Right.
Karp isn't afraid of controversy. He tackles some really big questions, like, has Silicon Valley abandoned its roots? Like, national ambition, what does this new arms race driven by AI, what does that mean for us? And how do we even start to rebuild a society that's using technology for good?
Right from the get-go, Karp really challenges the assumptions we have about Silicon Valley's past.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that like way back when Silicon Valley was super tied in with the U.S. government,
Oh, yeah.
even the military?
It's true. Their earliest innovations, they came from working with the government.
Wow.
You think about a guy like Vannevar Bush, the engineer, one of the founders of the Manhattan Project.
Hmm.
I mean, he was a national hero.
Yeah.
They called him the man who may win the war.
That is so different from like the picture we have in our heads of like a modern Silicon Valley CEO who's just like obsessed with the next consumer app.
Yes, very different.
Karp really thinks that this shift toward focusing so much on the consumer, it's actually hurting us when it comes to tackling these bigger societal challenges.
Yeah.
It's almost like he uses this metaphor of like a hive of honeybees suddenly just deciding to build tiny iPhones instead of like, securing the hive.
Yeah, it's a great metaphor, and it illustrates how dangerous it can be when we're just thinking about like short-term gains, what we want in the moment, instead of thinking about the good of everyone.
Yeah.
He really wants Silicon Valley to find its purpose again and use their ingenuity and resources to solve problems that will help all of us, not just a few.
And that takes us to, I think, one of the most interesting, thought-provoking arguments in the whole book.
Yeah.
The idea of a new arms race.
Mm,
One that's not fought with tanks and missiles, but with algorithms and AI.
right.
And Karp thinks that this race is moving even faster than the development of nuclear weapons.
It is scary how fast it's moving.
It's kind of alarming. It's interesting because Karp doesn't just like focus on the technical side of this AI arms race.
No.
He also goes into the cultural and philosophical parts of it and says that Silicon Valley often just doesn't get its adversaries.
Yeah.
He makes this really interesting comparison between the U.S. and China. He says that China's leader, Xi Jinping, actually understands Western culture better than a lot of Silicon Valley leaders do.
Interesting.
He even mentions that Xi Jinping loves Hemingway, and he gets how important culture is when you're building a national identity.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we really can't underestimate anyone. ARP thinks that if we want to win this AI arms race, we need more than just technical skills. We have to really understand our opponents,
Yeah.
what makes them tick, what they have you.
So what's the solution?
Well, Karp has this bold idea. He calls it rebuilding a technological republic.
Okay.
And in this society, Silicon Valley would get back to working with the government to solve critical problems.
Okay. But what does that actually look like? I mean, what does that look like on the ground?
Yeah, it's not so much a blueprint, but it's more like urging people to change their thinking, like a reorientation of priorities. Karp believes that the same intense problem-solving skills that we use to build consumer products can be used to improve public service and national security.
He gives this really compelling example from his own company, Palantir.
Yeah.
He talks about how Palantir software was used to help U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan find the source of roadside bombs.
It's amazing.
It's like a powerful example of how technology can actually be used to save lives.
Yeah, and it really highlights the engineering mindset that Karp is always talking about.
Yeah.
It's about being pragmatic, being observant, and focusing on actual results, not just good intentions.
So it's about taking that same serious analytical approach to problems that might not be as glamorous as creating the next viral app.
Exactly.
But Karp doesn't shy away from the difficult ethical questions.
Nope.
He jumps right into one of the most controversial ones. Should the tech industry be developing AI for military use? He says that if we don't, the U.S. could fall behind strategically.
Yeah, it's a big question. He brings up the potential consequences if we don't do anything.
Yeah,
He argues that giving up leadership in AI development could be disastrous for national security. But of course, he knows there are ethical worries about autonomous weapons
of course.
and the potential for misuse.
So it's like this balancing act. How do we use AI for good without letting loose something that we lose control of?
It's tough, and Karp doesn't pretend to have all the answers.
Right.
He wants us to think about both sides of the argument and really participate in this crucial conversation.
He wants us to go deeper than just thinking technology is either good or bad.
Right.
He wants us to see the nuances, to understand the potential benefits and risks,
Yes.
and to play a role in shaping a future where technology is used responsibly. This leads to another fascinating part of the book, this idea that having a shared national culture is super important for innovation and for people to work together. Karp says that blindly following a culture of neutrality and always having options, he calls it the religion of choice, can actually be harmful in the long run.
He really thinks that a strong national identity based on shared values can give us a sense of purpose,
Right.
which is something we seem to be lacking in our individualistic society.
Yeah, he uses this metaphor of Odysseus tying himself to the mast so he wouldn't be lured by the sirens.
Oh, yeah.
It's like saying that sometimes leaders have to limit their choices so they can achieve important goals. How does that apply to the choices that Silicon Valley is making?
That's a really good question.
So does having a strong national identity help or hurt innovation?
Right.
This is something that Karp wrestles with throughout the book, and I think it's something that will really resonate with a lot of our listeners.
Definitely.
It's a question we all need to think about as we try to understand how technology is changing our world.
Absolutely. We can't ignore it. We tend to think of national identity as like flags and anthems and stuff, but Karp goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
He says it's really about sharing values, believing in something bigger than just ourselves.
Right.
He uses this really interesting example from Singapore. Lee Kuan Yew, the guy who founded Singapore, put in place some pretty controversial language policies.
He was trying to create a sense of unity, right? Like in a really diverse society.
Exactly. He felt that having a common language was key for communication and for people to get along. Now, whether those policies were good or bad in the end, well, that's up for debate. But Karp uses Singapore as this example of a country that really made a point of building a strong national identity. And, it's hard to argue with their success both economically and in terms of technology.
It makes you wonder how that applies to the U.S. We're a nation of immigrants, people from all over the world. How do we build that unity without losing our diversity?
That's exactly the challenge Karp is wrestling with. He's not saying we should all be the same. He's saying we need to find a way to celebrate our differences while also recognizing what unites us as Americans. He thinks that having a shared national culture can actually be a strength. It can help us overcome our division and work together toward common goals.
I get it. It's like the difference between a team and just a bunch of individuals. A team has a shared purpose. They're working together toward the same goal. But a bunch of individuals, well, they might have different agendas. They might even be competing with each other.
Exactly. Karp thinks a strong national culture can create that teamwork feeling. It can give us a shared sense of purpose and inspire us to solve the big problems together.
But how do we even start to rebuild that sense of purpose? It feels like we're so divided as a country right now.
Karp suggests that we need to have a real, honest conversation about what it means to be American. What are our values? What are the things we want to achieve together? He thinks we need to come up with a vision for the future that inspires us, something that goes beyond our political differences.
So we need to rewrite the American story, not erase the past, but create a new chapter that builds on our strengths and tackles our weaknesses.
He's calling for us to be ambitious again, to believe that we can solve big problems and create a better future for ourselves and for generations to come.
That all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually make it happen? How do we bridge those divides that seem to be getting wider and wider?
Karp doesn't pretend to have all the answers. He's not saying there's some magic formula, but he does think we need to start by listening to each other. We need to try to understand where people are coming from, even if we don't agree with them. And we have to find common ground. There have to be areas where we can agree to work together, even if we have different views on other things.
It's like we need to rediscover how to have civil conversations, to disagree without being disagreeable.
Exactly. And Karp thinks technology can actually help with this. He sees the potential for social media to connect people across those divides and encourage constructive dialogue.
That's an interesting thought. We always hear about how social media is making us more polarized, but maybe it can also bring us together.
Karp is optimistic about technology's potential for good, but he's also realistic about the dangers. He's really worried about the spread of misinformation and how algorithms can trap people in echo chambers where they only see information that confirms their existing beliefs.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about how we use it.
Right. Karp believes we need to be more aware of how technology is shaping our society. and we need to make sure we're using it in a way that supports our values and our goals.
One thing I found really interesting in Karp's book is his discussion of the engineering mindset. You touched on this earlier, but I think it's worth coming back to. He seems to think that this mindset can be used not just to build products, but also to solve social problems.
It's about approaching problems and solutions with data. It's about being practical, observing the world carefully, and focusing on what actually works, not just good intentions.
So instead of getting stuck in ideology, we need to focus on what gets results.
Exactly. It's about being open to experimentation, trying new things, and changing our approach based on the evidence.
I like that. It's a more grounded, less emotional way to tackle these complex issues.
And Karp thinks this engineering mindset is something we need to teach in our schools.
That's a good point. It leads right into another big theme in the book, education. Karp talks a lot about how important it is.
He sees education as absolutely crucial for preparing people for the challenges and opportunities of this technological republic he's talking about. He argues that we need to move away from just memorizing facts and taking standardized tests and focus on developing critical thinking skills, problem-solving abilities, and creativity.
So it's not just about filling kids' heads with facts. It's about teaching them how to think for themselves.
Exactly. Karp believes we need to give students the tools to navigate a world that's becoming more complex and changing faster all the time. He wants them to be able to adapt to new technologies, solve problems we haven't even thought of yet, and contribute to building a better future.
It sounds like he's calling for a pretty big change in how we do education.
He's definitely challenging the way things are. He argues that we need to rethink what's important and invest in an education system that prepares students for the 21st century, not the 19th century.
But how do we even start making those changes? Our education system is so bureaucratic, it's like trying to turn a giant ship around.
Karp knows it won't be easy, but he believes it's essential if we want to build a technological republic that's truly innovative and competitive. He says we need to empower teachers, give them the freedom to experiment and tailor their teaching to what their students need, and we need to invest in research and development to come up with new and better ways of teaching.
So he's in favor of a more decentralized approach, one that gives more power to individual schools and teachers?
He's definitely skeptical of top-down solutions. He thinks real innovation happens at the grassroots level, where teachers are working directly with students and can adapt to the specific needs of their classrooms.
I can see how that would be more effective, but also seems a lot harder to put into practice.
It would take a change in how we think about things. We'd have to be willing to let go of some control and trust teachers to decide what's best for their students.
You know, as we're talking about education, I'm realizing how much it connects to what Karp was saying earlier about national culture.
You're right. Education plays a huge role in shaping our national identity. It's how we pass on our values and beliefs to the next generation.
And it's how we create the kind of citizens we need for a technological republic to thrive.
Exactly. Karp thinks we need to educate people who are not just good with technology, but also have strong ethics and are committed to the common good.
So it's not just about teaching kids to code. It's about teaching them how to be responsible and engaged citizens.
He wants to create a generation of Americans who are ready to lead our country into the future, people who understand the power of technology but also know how to use it wisely, and who are committed to building a society that's both innovative and just.
I really like that. It's a vision that's both ambitious and inspiring, but it also seems incredibly challenging. How do we bridge all the divides that exist in our society and create a sense of unity around something as complex and potentially controversial as technology?
Karp thinks we need to start by having open and honest conversations. We need to acknowledge people's anxieties and fears about technology, and we need to address those concerns in a thoughtful and reassuring way.
It's about building trust, right?
Exactly. We need to rebuild trust between the tech world and the public. And we need to make sure that everyone benefits from technology, not just a select few. We also need to work hard to minimize the risks.
So it's not about blindly embracing technology or rejecting it completely. It's about finding a way to harness its power while also protecting our values and our humanity.
He thinks we need to find a balance, to embrace the potential of technology to make our lives better, while also being aware of the potential risks.
This idea of balance seems to come up a lot in Karp's book. He's always encouraging us to find a middle ground, to avoid extremes, and to embrace complexity.
He's not offering easy answers or simple solutions. He's challenging us to wrestle with these issues and think critically about the choices we face.
And he's reminding us that the future isn't set in stone. It's something we create together through the choices we make and the actions we take.
He's calling for us to be active participants in shaping the future, not just passive observers.
You know, as we've been talking about Karp's ideas, I've been struck by how much he emphasizes the importance of history.
He believes we can learn a lot from the past, both from our successes and our failures.
He uses examples from history to make his points, to show how societies have dealt with technological change in the past, and to highlight how important it is to learn from our mistakes.
He wants us to think long-term, to see what's happening now in the context of larger historical trends, and to think about what kind of world we want to leave behind for future generations.
I think that's really important. It's easy to get caught up in the daily news and lose sight of the big picture.
Karp is encouraging us to step back and think about where we're headed as a society, and he's offering a vision for the future that's both challenging and hopeful.
I like that. It reminds us that we have a choice. We can just accept the future that's being created for us, or we can take part in shaping it.
He's calling for us to get involved, to believe that we can all play a role in building the kind of society we want to live in.
And he's saying that technology can be a powerful tool for doing that, but only if we use it wisely.
Exactly. He's not saying technology is some kind of utopia. He knows it has its dangers, but he also believes it can be a force for good if we guide its development and use it in a way that reflects our values.
So it's about finding that balance between the benefits of technology and the need to protect our humanity, our values, and our sense of community.
He thinks we can create a future where technology empowers us, connects us, and helps us solve the big problems. But it's going to take work, collaboration, and a willingness to embrace complexity.
It's a challenging vision, but I find it really compelling. It gives me hope for the future. It strikes me that Karp isn't just calling for like a technological revolution.
Yeah.
He's calling for a cultural one, too.
Absolutely. He believes that our values, what we believe in, shape how we develop and use technology.
So we have to look at our own assumptions and biases if we want to build a better future.
Yeah, he's challenging us to think critically about the messages we're sending, not just what we say, but also the technologies we create.
He makes this point about Silicon Valley's obsession with disruption.
Right.
He says it's led to this cultural short-term thinking, not enough focus on the long-term consequences of our actions.
He worries we're giving up sustainability and resilience just for speed and novelty.
It's like we're always chasing the next big thing without stopping to think where we're going or why.
Yeah, he wants us to slow down, to be more thoughtful about our choices,
Right.
and to consider how what we do today will affect future generations.
That's a really important message, especially in a world that's changing so rapidly.
Absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in the hype and forget what's truly important.
Cope reminds us that technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or bad.
Right? It's up to us.
It's our choice.
Yeah.
He believes we have the power to shape the future of technology, but we have to take responsibility for our choices.
That's the key.
He's calling for a more ethical and humane way of approaching technology, one that puts human well-being and the common good first.
Yes.
And he says we need to start by having honest conversations about the challenges we face and the values we want to uphold.
Open and honest dialogue is essential.
Right.
He believes that by working together, we can create a technological republic that's both innovative and just.
A nation that uses the power of technology to create a better future for everyone.
For all of us.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the technological republic, I'm left feeling challenged but also inspired.
It's a book that really makes you think.
It does.
It pushes you to question what you believe and to consider new possibilities.
Not an easy read.
No.
But it's so rewarding.
It is, and it's more relevant now than ever.
I agree.
As we face the complexities of the 21st century, Karp's insights provide a valuable guide for building a future that's both technologically advanced and human-centered.
We hope this deep dive has helped you understand Karp's vision and the challenges we're all facing in this new era of technological change.
If you enjoyed this discussion, please share your favorite moments in the comments below.
We would love to hear what you think about Karp's ideas and how they connect with your own experiences.
And if you found this episode valuable, please share it with your friends and colleagues.
Let's spread these ideas and get a conversation going about how to create a technological republic that benefits all of humanity.
That's the goal.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the technological republic. We'll see you next time.